The notification buzzed against my thigh, just as the principal started reading the first award. For a second, I thought it was a friend texting from the bleachers, until I saw the words in all caps. Bank alert. Withdrawal of $9,248 from AC. 112. My chest went hot. That was my college fund account. The one my late mom set up before she died. The one I'd been told was untouchable until enrollment. I glanced across the auditorium. My stepmother, Laura, was leaning toward the principal, her glossy hair catching the stage lights, smiling that tight, calculating smile she got whenever she knew people were watching. My dad was on her other side, clapping at someone else's kid shuffling past with a medal. For a second, I wondered if maybe, there was some mistake. But the number sat there in my palm, glaring back at me. 9,000, gone. The applause swelled, echoing off the gymnasium walls. I could taste metal in my mouth. My dress felt suddenly too tight, my skin prickling under the polyester. Around me, moms in pastel cardigans whispered about scholarships and SAT scores. I stared at the woman who had become my legal cosigner for convenience 3 years ago, who encouraged me to be realistic about college so I wouldn't be disappointed. And something in her posture, the way she avoided scanning the crowd near where I sat, made the air congeal in my lungs. I slid my phone into my clutch, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the names being read. Every instinct told me to storm up there, to demand answers in the middle of the stage. But I forced myself to sit still, my fingers curling into fists under the foldable metal chair. This wasn't the place. Not yet. If I moved too soon, she'd twist it. She always twisted it. Still, the money was gone. My mom's legacy. My ticket out of this town. The room blurred for a moment, and a question looped in my head like a siren. What if she's already decided it's hers? I swallowed hard and straightened in my seat, already plotting how to get close enough to her before the night was over without making a scene. But I didn't know yet. The scene was coming whether I wanted it or not. Shall I write the next chapter? I kept my eyes on the back of her head as the ceremony shuffled along, every cheer from the bleachers grinding into my nerves. It was only a high school gym, but it might as well have been a courtroom. Every polite laugh, every clap from parents layered like a soundproof wall between me and any sense of safety. For 4 years, I told myself that if I just kept my head down, worked hard, and didn't give Laura an excuse, my mom's promise would hold. That fund was my anchor. Without it, there was no university 3 hours away, no journalism program, no escape. People think, why don't you just get a loan? But they don't understand. My mom's death policy had been turned into that college account. My father remarried fast, and, for tax purposes, his new wife got put on as joint cosigner when I was still too young to object. It wasn't supposed to matter. Dad promised it was just paperwork. He said Laura was family now, and I should trust her. Trust. The word feels sour now. I remembered all the times she'd made little cuts into my dream. Oh, you'd be lonely that far from home. Those schools are all full of snobs. Why not stay here and help with your dad's shop? She'd accidentally forgotten to pass along flyers about scholarship deadlines, scoffed at my idea of living on campus, and kept steering every conversation toward her son Blake's future. Blake, 2 years younger, already enrolled at St. Lyman's, a private high school with sky-high tuition. The bank alert gnawed at me while awards blurred together. Could my dad? No? Would he really choose her child over his own daughter like that? A part of me whispered that maybe it was a mix-up, that the withdrawal was for something legitimate. But the other part of me, the part that remembered how she'd smiled when the principal praised her dedication to the PTA, knew better. When the ceremony finally ended, chairs scraped against the gym floor, and parents gathered in clumps, snapping photos. I slipped between them like shadow, edging toward the stage where Laura was still chatting, phone in hand. Behind my ribs, my heart was a caged animal. If she'd done what I thought she had, I'd have to decide how to corner her. In public, or quietly, where she couldn't hide behind that porcelain smile. Either way, this night wasn't over, and she wasn't getting away from me without an answer. Shall I write the next chapter? I caught up to her near the refreshment table, where she was laughing a little too loudly at something the principal said. The sound grated over me, high-pitched and false, like she was auditioning for a role. I waited until the principal drifted off toward another parent before I stepped closer. Laura, I said, forcing my voice into something steady. Can I ask you something? She turned, smile still painted on. Of course, honey. Isn't this night wonderful? So proud of you. I held up my phone, the bank alert glowing on the screen. Almost as wonderful as a $9,000 surprise. I didn't raise my voice, but I made sure she heard the edge in it. For the briefest moment, her face froze, eyelids flickering, lips tightening. And then she let out a tiny laugh, tilting her head like I was an overexcited child. Oh, that must be a bank glitch. You know they send those alerts late sometimes. My gut clenched. The timestamp is from 30 minutes ago. Her eyes darted toward where my dad was chatting in the corner. Sweetheart, you're making something out of nothing. We'll sort it out at home. Don't embarrass yourself here. The way she hit the word yourself felt like a slap, turning my accusation back on me, as if protecting her image was my job. The smell of brewed coffee and sheet cake icing washed over me, thick and dizzying. Around us, moms posed their kids for photos in front of a paper banner that read, "Congratulations, seniors." I wanted to rip that banner in half. Did you take it for Blake's school? The words came out sharper than I intended. Her smile thinned. I'm not having this conversation in front of people. And just like that, she picked up a paper plate of cookies, giving me her back as if I were some pushy fundraiser. I stood there, fists sweating, pulse pounding in my ears. If I pushed now, she'd make a scene about me embarrassing her. And I knew how fast people here would pick sides when Laura started performing Wounded Stepmother. Still, she'd slipped. That flicker in her eyes had been real, and the more I replayed it, the more I realized it wasn't just guilt. It was calculation, like she already had a narrative waiting to roll out. I walked toward the gym doors, the fake cheer echoing behind me, already knowing she wasn't going to let the truth out in private. Something bigger, and more public, would have to break her script. Shall I write the next chapter? The decision to bide my time was the only thing keeping my knees from giving out as I stepped into the cooler night air outside the gym. But I barely made it halfway down the sidewalk before the next blow landed. Through the open doors, I heard the principal's microphone crackle, followed by her chirpy voice. Before we wrap up, Mrs. Laura Hastings would like to say a few words as our PTA treasurer. I froze. The rustle of folding chairs stopped behind me, and cheers went up. Because, of course, Laura was the queen of this room. I turned back, drawn in like a witness to a slow-motion accident. She took the stage, graceful in that calculated way she had, ankles crossed, pastel blazer catching the light. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "as you know, our family, like many here, has been rethinking our priorities in this economy. It's so important to put resources where they'll have the biggest impact." She glanced toward where I'd been sitting, empty now, but my ghost was still there in her mind. "That's why," she continued, "we've decided to direct more of our educational funds towards schools that prepare the younger kids for success later on." Polite clapping rolled through the gym. Then she dropped the knife. It's about making choices that set the whole family up for stability, not just one person. My jaw tightened until I tasted copper. This wasn't just a slip in private. She was broadcasting her justification as if it were noble sacrifice. And every parent in the room thought she was talking in general. Only I knew she was announcing, in careful, coded language, that my future had been ripped open and funneled somewhere else. I could see my dad in the corner, eyes on the floor, clapping along with everyone else. The humiliation burned hotter than anger. She hadn't just stolen from me. She'd taken the narrative too, and dressed it in charity. No one called her out. Why would they? She sounded practical, generous even. And I knew if I burst back in, shaking and shouting, I'd look like an ungrateful brat to the dozens of parents who only knew her as that selfless woman on the PTA board. I turned away before she could catch my eye, but the words rooted themselves deep. Set the whole family up for stability. Stability for her son, her version of family. One where my late mother's promise didn't matter. If I was going to take this back, I needed more than outrage. I needed proof strong enough to cut through her performance, even in front of Dad. And that meant finding out exactly where my money went. Shall I write the next chapter? The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table pretending to study while Laura clinked mugs in the sink. The whole house smelled faintly of her vanilla coffee creamer, the same smell I couldn't wash out of my memory from last night. Dad had already left for the shop, leaving us in that wall of silence I'd come to know. The silence where civility was just a mask. I opened my laptop, not to study, but to pull up the bank's chat portal. My fingers trembled as I typed in my account number and asked for a statement. Of course, the representative was polite but firm. As both signatories have equal rights, I need written consent from both to make changes or freeze the account. My jaw tightened. That's exactly why Laura could do this. Dad wouldn't fight her. So instead of arguing with the bank, I asked for the most recent list of outgoing payments. There it was, third line down, 9,000 EFT payment, St. Lyman's Preparatory School tuition. I stared at it until the letters swam. I thought back to all those times she'd told me not to stress about applying to faraway scholarships, because the fund will be enough, or the way she'd laughed off college tours. It was never about preparing me. It was about making sure Blake had every advantage before I even left. The sound of the tap turning off snapped me back. Her voice floated over, casual. "What are you working on?" "Just checking deadlines," I said, without looking up, heart hammering. I wanted to slap the print button right then and there, but the wireless printer was in the hallway, in full view. So instead, I screenshot everything, emailing it to my personal account with the subject line, "Proof." She hummed a low, tuneless sound and padded upstairs. The second her footsteps faded, I crept into the office nook by the living room. Her territory, with her floral stationery and neat little filing trays. My hands shook as I slid open the lowest desk drawer. That's when I saw it. A folded receipt with the St. Lyman's crest, dated 3 days ago, marked "Paid in Full" in blue ink. I slipped it into my notebook and closed the drawer exactly as I'd found it. My pulse was so loud I had to swallow twice to keep from choking on it. Now I didn't just have a bank line. I had physical proof, with her handwriting in the payer section. The question was when and where to use it. She'd built herself a fortress of reputation in this town. If I came at her without my father's presence, she'd just call me a liar, jealous, selfish. So I needed an authority where she couldn't twist the record. And that meant one thing: a meeting at the bank, with every scrap of evidence laid out where she couldn't control the script. Shall I write the next chapter? I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her on stage at the PTA meeting, twisting my life into a footnote in her son's success story. By morning, I'd rehearsed a dozen ways to confront her, each one ending with her crocodile tears and my dad refusing to take sides. So I made a plan. I wasn't going to do it in our kitchen, or in her car, or at some family dinner where she could control who heard what. I was going to do it at the only place where her actions couldn't be waved off as a misunderstanding: the bank. First thing, I called the branch manager, Mrs. Cortez, a woman who'd known my family since she helped my mom open the original college fund. My voice shook explaining about the withdrawal, but I kept it together long enough to say, "I want to schedule a meeting with all signatories present." Mrs. Cortez didn't ask for drama. She just offered me a slot for Friday at 10 a.m. and said she'd send the invite to both my dad and Laura. By lunch, Laura was leaning against the doorway to my room, arms folded. "Your father and I got a bank notice. What's this meeting about?" I kept my gaze fixed on my laptop screen. "So we can all talk about the fund at once." Her lips curved in that thin non-smile. "We've already talked. We agreed it makes more sense to invest in Blake's prep for now. College isn't going anywhere." I turned to face her. My mom's money wasn't a family slush fund. It was for me. For a moment, her face hardened. Then she smoothed it over like wiping crumbs off a table. "Don't be dramatic, sweetie. We're still supporting your education, just smarter." As soon as she walked away, I pulled the receipt from my notebook and slid it into a plastic binder sleeve, right next to the printed bank statement Mrs. Cortez had emailed me overnight. I'd also printed the screenshots of my account activity, complete with timestamps. Pages of truth she couldn't shred with a look. Every second until Friday felt like sitting under a leak, drip after drip, waiting for the ceiling to collapse. I didn't know which frightened me more: her fury at being cornered, or Dad finally seeing her without the filter she'd so carefully maintained. But either way, the ceiling was coming down, and I wasn't going to be the one under it this time. Shall I write the next chapter? Friday morning came with that low, heavy sky that feels like something is about to break. I sat in the back seat of Dad's truck on the way to the bank, my binder clutched so tightly my knuckles ached. Laura was in the passenger seat, her perfume filling the tight space. Sweet, suffocating, like frosting left too long in the sun. No one spoke. Dad just hummed tunelessly to the radio, tapping the steering wheel, while Laura scrolled on her phone. I caught a glimpse of Blake's smiling face as her screen lit up. A text bubble reading, "Got the jersey, thanks Mom." And my stomach turned. When we stepped into the bank's cooled air, the sound of the doors hissing shut amplified every pulse in my head. Mrs. Cortez greeted us with a professional warmth, leading us into her glass-walled office. The transparency of the place, people walking past, able to see everything, was the exact reason I'd chosen this battlefield. We sat, and Mrs. Cortez folded her hands. "So, we're here to discuss some recent activity on the college fund account." Her eyes flicked to me, then to Laura. Before I could open my binder, Laura leaned forward, her voice syrupy. "It's nothing dramatic. We just reallocated some unused funds to better suit the family's needs. We thought state college was a smarter choice for—" "That's not what it's for," I cut in, my voice steady but shaking inside. I slid the binder forward, opening it so the tuition receipt stared up at all of us. "This is from St. Lyman's, paid from my account. The account my mom set up explicitly for my tuition." Laura's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she chuckled, glancing at Dad. "She's confused. Honey, remember we talked about—" Mrs. Cortez interrupted, picking up the receipt. "This handwriting next to payer, that's yours, Laura, and the payment source is the college account. That's against the fund's established terms, which are still in effect from the original beneficiary designation." She emphasized the last 4 words like a gavel strike. Dad shifted in his seat, eyes darting between us. "Laura, you said you were moving some interest, not the principal." Her voice snapped, brittle now. "What difference does it make? It's all for education." "For whose education?" I asked, finally meeting her glare. The silence that followed was so sharp, I could hear the clock ticking above the door. Mrs. Cortez cleared her throat. Given the circumstances, I'll be recommending we freeze secondary access until we clarify beneficiary rights. Effective immediately. Laura whipped her head toward her, but the manager was already filling out a form. The fortress had a crack, and for the first time, I saw Laura recognize she couldn't plaster over this one in front of everyone. But I had no idea the real explosion wouldn't come from her. Not yet. It would come from Blake. Shall I write the next chapter? We didn't speak on the drive home. Dad's hands stayed locked on the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the road as if it might bite him if he looked away. Laura sat ramrod straight, her phone in her lap. I didn't dare relax. I could feel her anger vibrating in the smallness of the cab, like a hiss building in a cornered animal. By the time we pulled into the driveway, my phone was already buzzing. I slid it out under the pretense of checking the time, and my gut seized. Dozens of notifications lit the screen. Instagram DM requests, group chat pings, comment thumbnails on my latest post. I opened one, and there it was. A screenshot of me from the PTA night, standing alone near the doorway, captioned, "Poor little princess isn't getting her fancy college after all." Beneath it, Blake's tagged usernames, laughing emojis, and comments from his friends piling in. My breath caught. He'd weaponized my humiliation before the dust even settled at the bank. And judging by the string of posts, he'd been at it since this morning, mixing in blurry, candid shots of me at school events, twisting them into jokes about gold-digger stepkids and Daddy's dead wife fund. I looked up to find Laura watching me in the side mirror, her lips barely pursed. Not surprise, not confusion, just observation, like she was studying how deep the cuts were landing. Inside the house, I went straight to my room and closed the door, but the walls felt paper thin. Laura's voice carried up the stairs. Fake sweet to Dad about Blake's prank, calling it kids being kids, insisting they'll work it out between themselves. Translation: she'd primed my father to dismiss it before I even brought it up. I sat on the edge of my bed, every nerve thrumming. What Blake had done was digital character assassination. In our world, social damage spreads faster than any truth. This wasn't just petty. He was making sure everyone in my orbit saw me as spoiled, delusional, and beat. The bank meeting had been my win, technically. But this was their counterattack, dragging the fight into a battlefield where reputation meant everything. And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. If I didn't flip this narrative back and make it public on my terms, the truth would suffocate under their version. The question was, how do you go toe-to-toe with someone who knows exactly how to turn your pain into his currency? Shall I write the next chapter? I stared at my phone until my reflection blurred into the glass. Eyes red, jaw tight. If I had learned anything from Laura, it was that silence lets the aggressor control the story. If I didn't move fast, those posts and comments would calcify into truth in my classmates' minds. So I started pulling receipts, literal and digital. Screenshots of Blake's posts, timestamps, the same tuition receipt I'd shown at the bank, the bank statement with the St. Lyman's payment highlighted in glaring yellow. I even dug out the old file my mom had kept, the original fund paperwork Mrs. Cortez helped her fill out, my name printed in the sole beneficiary field in block letters. Then I drafted a long, careful post, not a rant, not wild accusations, just facts, in plain, cold order. How my late mother's college fund had worked, who was on the account, the unauthorized withdrawal, and the proof. I blurred personal account numbers, but left Laura's neat handwriting on the receipt visible, right next to paid in full for Blake's tuition. I ended it with one sentence. My education isn't a luxury, And stealing from me isn't a family decision. It's theft. I hit post at 9:14 p.m., heart pounding as the loading wheel spun. Within minutes, the comments rolled in. Classmates messaged me privately with screenshots of Blake mocking me in group chats. An old teacher chimed in, "Your mom would be proud of you for standing up for yourself." Even parents from the PTA liked the post, a few adding subtle comments about misappropriation of funds and unacceptable behavior. 45 minutes later, I heard the slam of Laura's heels on the stairs. My door burst open without a knock. "Delete it. Now." Her face was flushed. Her phone gripped white knuckle in her hand. "You have no idea the damage you're doing to this family's reputation." "I'm protecting mine," I said, meeting her glare head on. "It's already shared. Even if I wanted to, I can't put it back in the box." She stepped closer, voice low and sharp. "You think humiliating us will get you what you want? All you've done is turn your father against you." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "No, Laura. You did that yourself." For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't have a practiced line ready. She stared at me for a long beat, then turned on her heel and pulled my door shut so hard the frame rattled. But I knew that silence wasn't surrender. It was regrouping. The question hanging over me now was how Dad would react once she twisted this back to him in private. Shall I write the next chapter? Dad barely spoke to me the next morning. He sat at the kitchen table with his coffee, the newspaper untouched, phone face down beside it. Laura hovered nearby, wordlessly topping off his mug, her silk robe flowing like she was gliding through some commercial for domestic bliss. When I came in, the air felt staged. I could sense it. The scene had been set before I arrived. "We need to talk," Dad said finally, without meeting my eyes. His voice was tired, but firm. "Laura told me about the stunt you pulled on social media." "It wasn't a stunt. It was the truth," I said, willing my voice to stay calm even as my pulse skipped. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Do you know how this makes us look? People in this town talk. The PTA, the shop customers, everyone. Good. Maybe they'll stop talking about me like I'm crazy and start asking why my college money paid for Blake's prep school." I snapped. Laura's tone cut in, honey over knives. "She's twisting things again, Frank. We talked about reallocating. She just didn't like the answer and decided to shame us publicly." Dad looked between us, his face tight. "I can't believe you'd think we don't care about your education. But actions have consequences, young lady. If you're going to make it impossible to handle this privately, then maybe you should figure things out for yourself in the fall." The words hit like a door slamming. "What does that mean?" I asked, though I already knew. "It means," Laura said smoothly, "that if you want independence, you'd better practice it. Rent, bills, decision-making, all on you. We can't support someone who undermines this family at every turn." My breath went shallow, kicking me out without actually saying the words. Classic Laura. She could frame it as letting me grow up, while making sure I struggled just enough to validate her story. I held her gaze. "Fine, I'll figure it out. But I'm not deleting the post, and I'm not apologizing for telling people the truth." Inside, though, I was shaking. I'd won the battle over the account at the bank, but now she was reaching for a different kind of control. My roof, my security. I went back to my room, closing the door slowly this time, my mind already turning over worst-case scenarios. If they cut me off, I'd need a plan. Fast. And a part of me wasn't sure whether the next hit would come from her, or someone else entirely. Shall I write the next chapter? 2 days later, the hit came. It wasn't from Laura this time, at least not directly. I was sitting on my bed sifting through job listings when my phone buzzed with an email from my university admissions office. The subject line made my stomach drop. Urgent enrollment status update. My fingers fumbled as I clicked it open. Inside was a single paragraph in polite administrative coldness. We have received recent inquiries regarding the funding of your enrollment and are holding your tuition payment status for review until these matters are resolved. Please contact the bursar's office immediately. I just sat there for a moment, blinking at the screen. Recent inquiries. Who the hell would call my school? The answer arrived before the question even finished forming. Laura, or someone acting on her behalf. Maybe even Blake, encouraged to make sure they know the truth. The last payment deadline was in 3 weeks. If the school thought my funding source was unstable, they could yank my place before classes even started. Every muscle in my body went ice cold. I called the bursar's office. The clerk's tone was friendly enough, but hesitant. We just had some questions come in, about the account ownership for the tuition funds you identified. Since your stepmother's name is on the original account, the system flagged it for verification. My grip on the phone tightened. She has no authority to withdraw her consent for those funds. I'm the sole beneficiary, and I have proof of that. Can I send it to you? The clerk agreed, giving me an upload link. I was already dragging files into a folder. The statement, the receipt, the original beneficiary document with my mom's signature. I added a cover letter stating that the cosigner status had been strictly for banking convenience, not ownership. When I hit send, my hands were trembling. Not from fear this time, but from the realization that Laura was escalating in ways that could quietly collapse everything without leaving fingerprints in my daily life. She'd shifted the fight out of our house, out of the bank, into an institution hundreds of miles away. And if I didn't counter every move instantly, she'd win by sheer attrition. It hit me then. I couldn't just keep blocking her punches. I had to go on the offensive, somewhere she'd never expect, and where the truth would stick permanently. Shall I write the next chapter?